Polish ambassador, featuring the Grouch and Scott Nice. Don't get it twisted.
I might be conscious, still I like to fuck.
I like it.
Do a little yoga, then lift some weights up. I be as I'm supposed to, perfectly imperfect. Indulge in deep combo, get hyped when she's...
Good evening. Welcome to World Kidney News. I am your host, Steve Belcher. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hope everyone is doing well out there in Facebook land or wherever you're watching, YouTube. Share this broadcast. This is going to be a great show tonight. One disclaimer, we had one guest, Stephanie Jenkins, who will not be able to participate this evening due to an unexpected event. But let me tell you, she would tell you that the benefits of home dialysis for her, because she just started maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, has been phenomenal. Now, let me tell you before we get to our special guest. According to government research, home dialysis is underutilized in the United States with only about, now this may be a margin of error about 1 to 2%, but only about 8% of dialysis patients undergoing renal replacement therapy do home dialysis versus 92%. Now, it may give or take a margin of error with these numbers, right? Because you can't really be specific, but 92% are being treated in center. That's a large gap. Now, look, home dialysis was introduced in the U.S. in the early 60s. Early 60s, they were talking about home dialysis. And here we are, maybe 21st century, right? And you still have a low amount of people doing home dialysis. You're talking 30, 40 years, maybe 50 years later or more. The percentage is still low as it was in the early 60s. Now, in the early 60s, it was 3 times a week at about 6 to 8 hours. And then you know what happened? You know what happened that just blew this out the water? When Medicare in 1973, they decided to pay for dialysis. That's when those companies came in and was like, oh, okay, we're going to get paid. Because look, back in those times, like the early 70s, 80s, a lot of nephrologists owned the dialysis clinics. You didn't have the big boys doing it. So the nephrologists owned the clinics, right? They managed it and had other people, I guess, doing the human resources and stuff like that. But then what happened, the big boys came in and said, we'll pay you this much for this patient. And a lot of nephrologists, I mean, I hate to use this term, but a lot of nephrologists sold out or they got paid because they sold over to DaVita, which was Renal Treatment Center, and the Fresenius was Biomedical Application or National Medical Care. But they sold out. And then that was the start of what we have today. Now, look, why would a company that gets paid per treatment, patients running on the dialysis machine, that machine spinning in center, why would they encourage people to do home dialysis when the more people you got in center doing in center, that's why you got 50 chair units, 30 chair units. That's ridiculous, insane. a 50. Can you imagine? I worked at a 50 chair unit in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Now, can you imagine the changeover when patients come off and patients start the treatment? Just the amount of people coming in and out, it's just crazy. So, with that being said, we got two ladies who decided to take it upon themselves to do home dialysis. They went against the status quo. Two veterans, two experts right here on World Kidney News. Let me give them the VIP treatment because they deserve it. They deserve the VIP opening because you had one 30-year warrior, and I'm not sure, Melissa, I believe she's maybe 20 years or more, but you got a combination of 50 years or more experience letting you know what they learned throughout their experience on dialysis and how home dialysis has been beneficial in their life. So without further ado, I want to bring on Don P. Mormon and Melissa Tubb, but I got to give them the VIP guest welcome. Don P. Edwards and Melissa Tubb. Wow, two power hitters right here tonight. What's going on?
Hey, I'm loving that intro. How you doing?
Pretty good. What's going on, Melissa?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. You was just on what, like 2 weeks ago?
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, man, this is great to have both of you two ladies on tonight because both of you advocate for home dialysis, whether it's home hemo or peritoneal. It's just by chance the two of you do home hemo, and I guess you both tried peritoneal as well.
Yep, both did.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. So let's start with Don. Don, we all know your story, but just tell us how you got involved in home hemodialysis.
Home hemodialysis was my second choice. After coming back from my transplant, I couldn't do peritoneal dialysis anymore because I had abdominal surgery. And I went back to the dialysis center, and I had a catheter. I caught MRSA, and I was in a nursing home for a long time, and I had to go back to the dialysis center, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I knew that home was where I felt the best and where I was the happiest. And so I started taking steps to find a home program that would accept me so that I could make a modality change because I had to get out of the dialysis center.
Wow. I mean, looking at you right now, you were in a nursing home. You know, the stigma that's centered around nursing home, they think is mostly older people over 20, over maybe 40, 50, 60 years old and, not being taken care of. But man, you look well. I mean, to say that you were in a nursing home, you had MRSA, and to be here today. So how has home dialysis been beneficial to you?
Well, like I said, when I started home hemo, I was in a wheelchair. I had fractured my hip. I had hip replacement surgery. I was getting over MRSA, and I was also recovering from the early stages of colon cancer. I had my colon removed, so I had all of this going on at the same time. And I was under 100 pounds, and
what?
I was under 100 pounds. I wish I had pictures, but I was fading fast. I was not doing well at all. and I was getting the dialysis treatments 3 times a week, and I wasn't getting any better. I wasn't feeling good. I had no appetite, and I just knew that I had to get back home because when I was doing PD, and getting my treatments 7 days a week, I was good. I mean, I was up, I was feeling good, I was vital, vibrant, and I was doing stuff, but I knew that I wasn't going to get better if I didn't get home.
Yeah, I mean, you and Melissa have similar stories, I believe, because you both home hemodialysis, did in-center, peritoneal, transplant.
Wow.
Don, you've been dealing with this since the 20s, right?
Yeah, since I was 23.
So this
Oh,
is your 30th year.
I'm going into year 30, and I think I got another year left. It was
Wow.
1993 when I started.
Wow. I'm sure you can give a hope to a lot of people tonight who think that they can't have a good quality life on dialysis despite being hit with kidney disease.
Absolutely. You just got to make those choices, and you got to follow your care team, and you got to do your homework, and you got
Mm-hmm.
to pick the option that's best for you. Everybody's not a home patient. That's not everybody's perfect choice. Transplant is not for everybody. PD's not for everybody. That's why there's so many different options, and they call it options because you have an option to choose which is best for you.
Wow. Now, Melissa, how does your story begin with dialysis? Because 20 years or
20,
more you've been dealing with kidney disease?
24. Yep.
And you were on Uncle Jim Kidney Stories too, and you shared that when you first applied for a transplant for your first one, they wanted $12,000 and sat down with you and went over it with you with a calculator. Share your journey with this disease.
Mm.
So I started dialysis in 1996 on my 17th birthday. I had a UTI that I actually had went to the hospital twice for in the previous 2 weeks before I was finally admitted. And so my kidney failure was completely preventable. So the first couple of years, I really sort of just dissociated myself with everything as far as the medical teams and all of that, because I already felt like they had failed me, so I couldn't trust them. And I was never approached about home options or anything, even though I think peritoneal was probably the only thing available at the time. So I did 9 years of in-center dialysis, and then I was transplanted. I got a deceased kidney from a man that was 10 years older than me, I believe, at the time. And that lasted me for 11 years. And then when I found out that I already knew that I was going to be, because I had the rejection episode actually 3 years into my transplant. And so I had already started mentally preparing that at some point I was probably going to have to go back on dialysis. So I started doing my research because I was adamant that I didn't want to do in-center. As a matter of fact, when I first found out that I was in rejection, I had signed a DNR because the only thought that came to mind was that I was going to have to go back and do in-center because I hadn't been educated on the other options.
Wait,
And
you signed a DNR.
at 20, I was 28 at the time. I had signed my DNR because I was just not going to go back on in-center dialysis. I hated it, and I hated the way that I felt. I hated the person that I had became on it. I was just a very detached and upset person because, it's hard to not get pulled into that when you feel like you're not being listened to, and you don't have anywhere to place that frustration. So so I investigated all my options and decided PD was initially the way I wanted to go. That was mainly because I had two options, because I could do manuals or I could do the machine. And I also didn't really want to have to go back to sticking myself or having another graft to put in or anything like that. So the idea of having just a catheter and not using blood and it being gentler on my system was ideal. That worked actually really well for me for like 4 years. And then I ended up with a really bad case of peritonitis and an infection in my actual catheter. So the catheter itself had to be removed. And at that point, I knew I still didn't want to do in-center. So I decided to transition to home hemo, and I had to do some bridge in-center hemo because obviously I didn't have my PD catheter anymore. So during that time, I immediately, even when I was downstairs, still in center, I was putting my own needles in, which I think for me was the biggest hurdle, even though
Yep.
it's funny because I went to school, and we talked about this on last show, like because of how the doctors would talk to you often over your head and not using layman's terms and stuff. So I went to school to study medicine so that I would know what they're talking about. And in that process, one of the things that I began to understand, it was just kind of, I had to study, was phlebotomy. So I can easily access veins on other people. I have no problem. But to stick myself was just so like, just unnormal. And I immediately want to like pull a needle back out when I'm inflicting pain on myself, you know? So I knew that was going to be my struggle, was getting past the needle part. And but you know, doing it in the center downstairs before I even got into training made it a lot easier because I just felt more comfortable because I had all these people around me that were watching me. So I knew that if I was not doing it right, they would say something. But the funny part is that I had more infiltrations during my training when I was letting them tell me where to go than I had. And I have had none since I've been doing them at home because I follow like exactly where my body tells me that I think I should go. And so I think that's, you know, like Dawn said, just really kind of tapping into your, you know, doing what's right for you and not necessarily discarding everything that they tell you, because obviously they're professionals and they do know a lot of what they're talking about. But we do have to, especially in this type of condition, I think a lot of times we tend to turn too much of our care over to our care team, and we're not taking enough of it into ourselves. And I think that's the lesson that I had to learn from a lot of that stuff, was that I really did need to just take more responsibility for my care and listen more to my body and trust myself than placing that all in other people.
Wow. Now, Dawn, in the beginning of the opening of the broadcast, I mentioned that government research states that home dialysis is underutilized in the U.S. with only maybe about 8%. It could be a little more, a little less, of dialysis patient undergoing renal replacement therapy at home versus about 92%, 93%, however you want to frame it up, at in center. Why the disparity in numbers? Why do you think a lot of people are not being at home when they could be in the comfort of their own home? I know you said in the beginning not everybody is cut out or going to be able to do home dialysis, but for the people that can do it, why do you think the numbers are so low right now, especially in this time of COVID-19?
Well, I got 3 words for that. There's fear, misinformation, and lack of education. And I don't mean that in a way that you know, my fellow warriors are ignorant. I don't mean that at all. What I mean is that they haven't been thoroughly educated by the members of their care team or their dialysis staff or their physicians on their treatment options. They get a lot of talk from that back alley kind of talk from patients who have gone home and tried it, something went wrong, and they had to come back in the dialysis center. So they get the horror stories, and the stories are sometimes, you know, kind of skewed in the way of the person, that didn't do well on dialysis, they're gonna say, "Oh, that ain't no good because this is what happened to me." When maybe sometimes, and I'm not gonna say all the times, but maybe sometimes, it was due to maybe that patient really didn't follow all of the instructions, or maybe that just wasn't the option for them. So that doesn't mean that it's gonna happen to you. And now that they have this new payment system coming into play, now everybody's going to be educated on home dialysis now, because it has to be done. And we have to do our homework ourselves as patients, to look and see what it is that what options we have. And then the next thing is, a lot of us unfortunately crashed into dialysis. So the first place we got put was the place that we stayed, and that was the dialysis center.
Right. Wow. Melissa, what's been a challenge for you in advocating for home dialysis where you're at? I mean, what have you seen the biggest challenge for people not wanting to do home dialysis, or they just not told about it?
I think it is the lack of education, like Dawn touched on. I feel like there hasn't been any benefit for the nephrologists or the large corporations to get people to start doing it at home. It benefits them more to keep a revolving door system of patients coming in and out, because that secures their paycheck. So I think that the lack of education around it has been a big thing, and then the level of sort of intimidation with the amount of supplies that are usually told that people need. I know that when I did peritoneal, I had way more supplies than I did doing home hemo, and so I've actually gotten some of my office space back, which I'm happy about. But so I think those are two of the big barriers, but I also think, like Dawn said, I mean, she covered it perfectly, because fear is a huge part of it. I know for me, actually one of the barriers, and I don't know if it varies from state to state, but the company that I was initially with when I was doing peritoneal was DaVita. And when I told them that I wanted to do home hemo, my nephrologist with DaVita refused, because they had no solo home hemo patients, and I don't have a care partner. So I was not going to accept that as being an answer, because I felt like if I was capable enough for them to send me home with the machine to do peritoneal, and if I could show them that I could handle all of the hemo stuff during training, then there would be no reason for them to refuse to send me home with the machine and be able to do that on my own. So I looked into other centers. I started calling Fresenius, and then there's another company here in Cape Coral called American Renal. And I went with American Renal because they were a smaller and nephrologist-run organization. And even when I actually switched to them before I did the home hemo and was doing my in-center hemo there. And even before I started training, like I've never even seen an FA, the facility administrator. I've never seen one work the floor as much as the guy does at ARA. And that just showed me a different level of care than DaVita provides. And I really hadn't been exposed to that in quite a few years, because when I first started dialysis in '96, it wasn't DaVita. It was a hospital-owned dialysis clinic, and it was ran more like a hospital would be, and a little more professionally than DaVita and Fresenius seem to run some of their clinics. So I appreciated the change, but I have to say that it didn't come easily, because I felt a bit blackballed. And they actually, before I even got out of the hospital with the peritonitis, DaVita was texting me to ask me when I was going to drop my machine back off to them.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm still in the hospital. How am I supposed to get you my machine? And I was in the hospital because they missed the infection that I told them that I had. So, I mean, it goes into, really, it's advocating for yourself and taking responsibility for your own care, because I think it is easy to just take a back seat and go in and sit in a chair 3 times a week. But when you're not really conscious of the damage that is doing to your body internally because you are not getting enough dialysis 3 times. You're just not. And even if you're running 4 hours, which is still kind of the equivalent of most of us that run 5 days at home on hemo, you're taking all of that stuff out of your system way too quickly. And that's something that they do not really educate you on, especially when you're in center. They're just worried about getting you in the chair and getting you out so they can get the next person in there. You know, they don't tell you that this is damaging your body. This is literally shortening your lifespan by sitting in this chair 3 times a week when you
don't tell you
to do it at home.
No.
Wow. You know, one thing I want to elaborate on that has nothing to do with this topic, but when you mentioned about ARA and the administrator coming on the floor, the Vita got slick. So what they did for the administrator position, they went away from the registered nurse being an administrator. You do have some small units out there with the Vita where the FA is a nurse, but a lot of the FAs for the Vita have like masters or BA degrees and know nothing about clinical. And so they use the clinical manager as a way of doing all the on the
floor stuff, the clinical work.
Yeah, on the floor stuff and the reports and the benchmark stuff, the clinical aspects of the reports that need to get to the top to report, you know, calcium, phosphorus, and all that. But you know, and because of that, I feel like care has gone down. It's been more business minded than clinical aspect of it instead of having a balance. But Don, I wanted to ask you a question. Let me find it. So Karen Muffet Wentz said, I am just lazy and need to be in a center, but now they are getting on my nerves. What would you say to a person like this if you was trying to recruit or advocate? I want to ask you and Melissa, but I want to start with you, Don. What would you say to a person who, if you was working for which you are working for Next Stage, and you was in the clinic trying to recruit for home dialysis, and this person said this to you, what would be your comment to her, to Miss Went?
Well, I mean, respectfully, I would say, you know, that, okay, you have the right to be, you know, feel like you're lazy because you don't feel good. I mean, that's understood. But when I talk to a patient about home dialysis, I don't want to talk about the machine, and I don't want to talk about how you do it, and I don't want to talk about that stuff. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is the clinical benefits. What that dialysis machine 3 times a week does to your heart in the long run. And you can't be lazy with yourself, because we're talking about trying to make it 20, 30, 40 years. And, you know, I know that data is data and it can go one way or the other, but a lot of patients, you know, that we see in the dialysis center, we see them come in, they standing upright, they walking in, telling jokes, hey brother, and everything. And then as the years go by and time starts to tell on you. And, you know, they go from standing up straight to now they need a cane. And then they in the walker, then they're in the wheelchair. You know, this is the gradual deterioration on the body. Then there's some, you get friendly with them and then you just don't see them anymore. The leading cause of death for us is, number one, cardiac arrest.
Yep.
That is the leading killer of dialysis patients. The second leading cause of death is infection. And both of those rates are higher in the dialysis center than they are at home. Both of them.
Wow. Now, Melissa, if you was advocating, like if you was going at an in center and you got the same, same comment as I showed Dawn.
Mhm.
What would be your response to that comment?
Well, I actually had to laugh because lazy is my middle name. Like I am not, trust me, I like things easy peasy. And but the part that sold me on home dialysis, even though I realized it would be some work, is that I can do it on my own schedule. I'm not having to like punch a clock when I go in, you be here at 2:30 for your dialysis treatment Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If I want to do it at 10 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning, I can choose when I can do it. So if I'm feeling lazy, some days I do it later at night, and some days I'll do it first thing in the morning. But the biggest thing I think is really just the way that I feel. I mean, it's hard to even explain, because it's almost like how somebody told me about transplant. Like you don't know how sick you are until you actually get your transplant. And I realized the same thing applies with in-center versus doing home dialysis, because you don't really know how bad you feel because you just are so used to feeling bad, that when you start doing home dialysis, you're like, huh, okay, now this is what feeling okay feels like. This is what feeling good feels like, because again, you're not putting your body through so much by trying to cram in 7 days of treatments into 3, and so I think the biggest thing for me to convey is really that how much better they will honestly just feel. And I don't know if some of that is related to just taking more accountability and responsibility for your care, or if it is all 100% just the fact that you're not putting your body through such a difficult process and in such a short period of time. You're able to spread that out over the course of the week. And so I mean, I just think that lazy is, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of an excuse, because I would say that I told myself that for a long time before I really started looking into doing the home options. I thought it was going to be much easier to just go in and sit in a chair and let somebody take care of me. But then when I realized that that person that's taking care of me has to run around and take care of usually 4 other people simultaneously, am I really getting that great a care in center when I can set up my machine when I want to, and I can create that space? I can listen to whatever music I want as loud as I want. I can have my TV on. I can play video games. It's just the freedom of being able to create that harmonious space to do my treatment in is more than enough to convince. To If somebody would have told me about all of that years ago, I would have been doing it years ago, regardless of my fear of poking myself and things like that. Because again, I think it's just having to do it in a center where there is just sort of an overall feeling of chaos sometimes, and watching, and like Dawn said, you get to know people and they pass away. It can be depressing. You've got some people that come in that are really upbeat, and some people that come in that are just angry and nasty and mad at the world, and they want to take it out on their text and the people next to them and everything. So eliminating all of that and being able to do it in my own setting where I can, create it as peacefully as I would like is the selling point, I think, and I think that if there was even an ability to do like a trial run for somebody, without having to go through all the training, where you could just do your treatment at home for a couple of days and see the difference, I think that people would just be as sold on it, and you'd have people lining up in droves to be taking the training to do it.
Right. Now I gotta give it to Karen, because she says she also works at the same hospital, so it's easy for her to, right after work, just go up to the second floor. Now that may be, like,
Yeah, you got to give that to her. It's convenient.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But wow. But one more comment I wanted to ask you about. What would you say to Brooklyn Weave? She said that she wished she had the courage.
And I know Brooklyn too. Cut that out, girl. You got the courage. All you have to do is jump. I'm telling you. I was afraid in the beginning. I wish to God I had started on home therapies. I wish that that's the way that I started. I would tell anybody or anybody that's in CKD, if don't crash into dialysis. Don't wait until the last minute. Go get your PD catheter placed and start on a nice, gentle dialysis. Just it's you won't realize that that your health is deteriorating. You get to keep whatever renal function that you have, and that is such an important piece that I wasn't told back in the beginning. I wish I had known that you keep that whatever renal function that you have, you can keep that, and continue to urinate. I mean, that's such an important piece that we just miss by going in the dialysis center. And even the people who are on hemodialysis in center that are continuing to urinate, you could still get a much better quality of output if you're doing peritoneal dialysis.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, how can we even, we had the president sign this executive order, and we had a lot of, Don, you even mentioned there's supposed to be more emphasis on home dialysis, but does it seem like it's happening?
Gradually, it is starting to happen. I think COVID has shook up the world, to tell you the truth. And I'm not here to, to put anybody's option down, but I am so thankful that I'm at home, and I'm doing my treatments in the privacy of my own home, in my own space, where I'm comfortable, where my germs are my germs, and I'm not sharing them with 30, 40, 50 other people, plus staff members and, and other people. I'm just so thankful that, that I am able to be home during a time like this. And, I mean, hats off to those who have to get out there, and go and put that and mask up and, and go out to the dialysis center. I'm not, I'm not knocking you at all, but I'm just really thankful that I have the privilege of being able to do my treatment, at home now. But as far as the payment system is concerned, starting in 2021, our nephrologists and our dialysis centers are going to be receiving payment incentives for educating patients and getting them to go home, because the fact of the matter is that every year they're adding 120 more thousand Americans to the dialysis center list of patients, and there's just not going to be enough chairs for everybody. So some of us got to go home.
Wow. Now, Melissa, let me ask you, y'all make it sound like home dialysis is just awesome, great. But I know there's been some challenges. Can you share some challenges you experienced with home dialysis?
Well, I would say I've ran into about 3 so far. My first one was rather scary, and also one of the things that I was warned about with doing home hemo solo, because I don't have someone that I can just call for help. But my venous needle actually came out when I had about an hour left on the machine, and the machine was still going. So I had to try and stop the machine, but also try to put pressure on my arm. And my graft is, luckily, it's in my upper arm. So I was able to like put my chin on it and hold some pressure on it while I turned the machine off. So that was one. The other one was I ended up having an issue with the machine because it was failing one of the air detector alarms, but it would still go through the process and let me prime it and things like that. And I ended up doing the research to find out that it had failed it like 3 times. So I called Next Stage and had them replace the machine. But prior to that, what ended up happening was I had air in my venous line and it didn't catch it. And thankfully, because I stay awake during my treatments, because I have to take my blood pressures every half hour, I caught it, and I caught it literally right before it was at the needle hub, and there was a lot of air in the line. So I could have very well gotten an embolism from that if I hadn't have stopped the machine. The third, I would say the difficult thing is because, again, I live by myself. I recently took a trip, and the machine is very heavy. So if you don't have someone to help you lift it and you're doing home hemo, then that can be difficult. Because obviously we're also not supposed to lift too much with that arm, but here I am carrying around this 100-pound machine. So, but in the peritoneal machine, that was actually much easier for me to travel with. It was bigger, like long wise, but it was a little lighter. However, I think those are all things that, we can get past, and I feel like now that I've got like the two scary things, like that's the worst that could happen is my needle could come out, like, and I made it through that. So I think now that I've got those under my belt, like I really don't have any apprehension or fear around it. I've used travel bags, I've used my PureFlow. So I've got pretty much all of the things and I've had just about every alarm in the machine. And I did that during, when I was doing my training, I swear the machine like alarmed on everything. So I had already had every alarm under my belt and knew how to fix them if they came up. So yeah, I think that having had those experiences, although in the moment they were scary, if you have someone at home with you, obviously that would make it a little easier, but it's not impossible to do by yourself. And you can easily get, we all have an inherent knowledge of like critical thinking and being able to problem solve in a rather rapid way. And when it comes to that, I think that instinct just sort of kicks in. And so you just figure out what to do, and you fix the problem. And they train really well. I feel like almost every program probably has a 4 to 6 week training program. I think mine was 4. But, over that 4 weeks, any question I could come up with, I asked, even if it seemed like it was stupid. I would always kind of preface it and say, okay, this might be a stupid question, but what if this? And sure enough, like some of the things that I brought up that I felt like were stupid questions were things that I ended up needing to know the answer to later on. So, there's obviously, that's the biggest thing is really just taking an interest in it. Don't just go through the motions and, look through the book and do this, like actually read your book, read your manuals and educate yourself so that any possible thing that could go wrong, you don't feel so overwhelmed and you can handle it right away without panicking.
Right. So let me just ask you right quick before I move on to Dawn. If you told me that and I was getting ready to start dialysis and I was trying to weigh my options and you told me the story you just told me and I said, what if that happens to me? Or I'm scared of whatever happened to you may happen to me. What would you tell me to ease my fears?
I would say that number one, these aren't common occurrences. It's just a risk. It can happen. I went back through and have since made changes to like the way that I tape my needles down and stuff so that I could prevent it from possibly happening again. So I think that all of them are just learning experiences. They don't have to be traumatic unless we label them as such, and it shouldn't be something that I think would deter people, because I know people that do in-center and their needles have come out while they're in-center. And sometimes it's even worse because you've got somebody who's already helping somebody crash and then your needle comes out. They may not be able to get to you right away. Whereas with me, I'm here, I'm taking care of just me. I don't have 3 or 4 other people to keep an eye on. So if something goes wrong, I can address it immediately. Same thing with like if my blood pressure drops, because I actually have severe hypotension. Like my blood pressure runs 70/50 most days.
Me too.
And it gets much lower than that on occasions. And so I know how to handle that stuff. And because I know my body and because I've been on dialysis for so long, I know I get the symptoms of when it's going to start dropping. And so I know I might need to give myself a little bolus of fluid. Whereas if I'm in center, I don't know how many times my pressure has literally dropped to where I've passed out completely and they hadn't even got to me. And they have to rush over, flip me back, give me a bunch of saline. Or cramps. Like I have not had a cramp on dialysis.
No more.
I can't even tell you. Like in the last 6 years or 5 years that I've been doing dialysis again, I have not had one cramp. Whereas when I was on in-center, like I would say at least once a week, I would have
It was a common occurrence.
such bad cramps that sometimes they would have to take me off because, again, you're you're pulling all of that fluid and all of those toxins out in such a short span of time all at once because you're missing treatments every other day. So, when you're not doing that, your system is just so much more balanced and you don't have those like ebb and flows of, okay, so after dialysis, I can't do anything for the rest of the day. I'm going to go home and sleep. And then maybe I'll start feeling better about the time I'm going to go back in. I don't have that. It's just more of an even keel because I'm doing dialysis 5 days a week versus 3.
Now, wow.
We got some good questions up there,
Right.
Steve.
I see. Now, Don, what has been the biggest challenge for you doing home dialysis? I know you've done it for a long time. You work with Next Stage. You before COVID, you traveled around speaking about home dialysis. You considered even an expert in this field. But I know you have experienced some challenges with home dialysis. I'm sure not everything is rosy colored. So can you share maybe some of the experience that you experienced that were kind of bad?
Yeah. One of the first things, just to keep it real, is that I'm a dialysis patient. I have kidney disease. I've had kidney disease for almost 30 years. I don't feel good all the time. Sometimes I just don't feel good, and I don't want to. I don't feel like coming home, setting up all of this stuff, and and getting ready to get on the machine. And so sometimes I feel like I'm burnt out, but that's when I dig deep. I'll go and have me a cup of coffee, or I'll take a nap, or whatever it is that I got to do. But I know that I have to get my treatment done, or even sometimes if it's really bad, then I can put it off until the next day as long as I get my treatments in. So that's a challenge when you don't feel good, and you don't have anybody who can set your machine up for you, or or something like that. But the thing about it is, you don't have to always. You don't have to do it that day. PD is a bit different. You feel the same all the time, so you can pretty much set your stuff up every day. Um, Another one of my challenges is just like Melissa, my blood pressure is always low. And that's one of the great things about doing your treatments more often is your blood pressure goes down. So you're not fluid restricted anymore for the most part. My nurse is calling me on the phone in the middle of the day telling me to drink or eat something salty because your blood pressure is low. So instead of them saying, "Oh my God, you drank too much," they're saying, "Oh, you need to drink some more. You need to eat something salty and bring your blood pressure up." So one of the scariest things that's happened was I started to lose consciousness while I was going through treatment. But the thing about that is, just like Melissa said, your instincts kick in. I could hear it in my ears, and I started to feel faint, and my tongue started sweating. So I'm like, "Uh-oh, this is pass out time. I know what this is." I reached over, I opened up my white clamp, I gave myself some saline and closed the clamp, and there I am. And about 2 minutes, I'm feeling myself, coming back and feeling myself feeling better. But I mean, that has definitely happened to me on plenty of occasions in the dialysis center. And like Melissa said, nobody made it there in time, and I just passed out.
Mm-hmm. Don, I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
If you had an opportunity to go to be in the nephrologist's office and to educate this gentleman right here, Martin Pito, who is at stage 4 kidney disease, what information would you share with him, being that he's on the brink, on the cusp of going on to end stage renal. We don't know when, but what information would you, I want to ask you and Melissa, what information would you share with him about what he's about to embark on?
Well, the first thing I would say is you're in the right place. You're around peer mentors, people who've been there, done that. So you're smarter than the average bear already. You're doing the right thing. The second thing that I would tell you is to make sure that you're keeping up with your doctor's visits, getting your blood work checked, checking your blood levels, and you're following the advice of your medical professionals. You should definitely be watching your diet more than anything right now, because that can prolong your need for going on dialysis at all. If you're at that stage where you're on in stage 4, about to go into stage 5, now is the time to start looking into your treatment options, and you need to talk to your physician about those treatment options. You don't want to wait until you hit stage 5. You're getting rushed into the emergency room, and they're going to give you emergency dialysis where they're putting a catheter in your neck and they're putting you on hemodialysis, because then you don't have any choices. Now you have the time to learn about all of the treatment options. So if you want to choose a nice gentle way to go into dialysis, like peritoneal dialysis, where it's nice and slow, easy dialysis, you go get your catheter put in. It takes about an hour to put the catheter in. It takes about 2 weeks for the catheter to heal. Then it's about 4 weeks for training. And you go right into, not even 4 weeks, it's about 2 weeks for PD training. And you go gently into dialysis, so that you're not shocking your body and you're not shocking your life by going into dialysis in a violent way.
Wow. What would you say to him, Melissa, if you had to educate Martin, uh, you know, at a doctor's office?
I don't know what I can add to what Dawn said, because she covered a lot of it. Diet obviously is a big thing. That was something that wasn't covered with me until I was already stage 5. And at that point, then I had to go on a renal diet, So I think diet and educating yourself, really immersing yourself in the information and making yourself aware of your options, researching which one will be best for you, talking to other patients, because that's the key. And that's what I think a lot of people don't do, because you're just so overwhelmed with the diagnosis that you tend to just block yourself off rather than immerse yourself in it. And I know that was one of the things that I did in the beginning, was I didn't educate myself, and I didn't take the initiative to really learn what my options were. And I regretted it. And now that I'm more educated and more informed, I'm definitely a proponent for home dialysis for everybody. And I think that anybody can make it work. I've seen people in 1-bedroom apartments that, have dialysis supplies in their living room. And if you want it bad enough, you'll figure out how to make it happen. And I think that home dialysis is just it's the new gold standard, because I know they used to say hemo was the gold standard, but I think that just home dialysis in general now is the new gold standard, because you're making far less work on your body, and that's the less traumatic way to go to be able to extend your life as long as possible.
Mm-hmm. Now, Martin, I want to put something else he said, but he says his diet is in control. He only eat vegetable diet and exercise regularly. But one thing he said that, Dawn, I want you to address. Let me find this comment. He says he's considering it, which we're talking about home dialysis, but then he says, and have to try to add to my monthly budget. Now, I'm not sure what he means by that, but does anybody, if you want to switch or go to home dialysis, do you need any particular budget to do home dialysis?
Absolutely not. Once you enter stage 5 and you go into complete ESRD, which is renal end-stage renal disease, you're automatically covered by Medicare if you are an American citizen and you have contributed already to Social Security. So if you're entitled to Medicare benefits and you've worked enough quarters and all of that during the course of your lifetime, under as of 1972, everyone with kidney disease in the United States of America, every American citizen is entitled to coverage under the Medicare system. That covers 80% of your dialysis costs. The other 20% will come from your secondary insurance, which you need to make sure that you have before you go into kidney failure. So you want to make sure that all of your insurances and everything is lined up. If you need a secondary, you want to get that now, because once you go into kidney failure, it's harder to get that secondary insurance. But anybody that's already on dialysis in a dialysis center, you don't need a nickel. If they're paying for your dialysis in the dialysis center, they'll pay for your dialysis at home. And actually, you get better supplies, you get more supplies, you get everything that you need to do that dialysis treatment. You don't have to buy not one thing. Oh, I can't hear you, Steve.
All right. I'm sorry. There we go.
Oh,
Melissa, how do you adjust your target weight?
Well, it's much easier to do because now that I am doing it 5 days a week, like my weight doesn't fluctuate like it did. I'm actually losing weight now that I switched from peritoneal to hemo and I'm doing it at home. So I gauge it by, I mean, I don't really monitor my fluid intake. I mean, I know that I drink more than 32 ounces a day now because, like Dawn, my blood pressure's low. So I'm constantly getting phone calls telling me to drink more and eat some pickles or whatever, and so my dry weight, I really adjust it on my own, and I base it on how I feel, and I know what my low blood pressure is and what a really low blood pressure is. So I know, like, if it's too low, I won't take anything off. Sometimes I run on the machine and I'm not removing any fluid because I haven't gained any. So that's the easier thing, because I think when most people, one of the complaints that I hear about people in center is that they're getting too much taken off of them. And I know that part of it is because the centers feel pressured to not leave any fluid on somebody because it can cause them to have congestive heart failure. And they don't want to have a patient that they may have done that to. So
right.
they will, I don't know any times that I ever went in, even when I was coming in like right at my dry weight or maybe just a little bit above it. I don't know any times that they didn't try to challenge me where they were taking more off than I felt that they should. And then what ended up happening was usually I would tank out or I would cramp really bad. And it's because when you're in center, you're treated as more of just a textbook case. And so if they tell you to drink 32 ounces a day, they're going to assume you've drank that 32 ounces in those 3 days, and that's what they're going to go for your goal, rather than me being at home. And if I go, okay, well, I know I drank 64 ounces. Well, I can calculate that. And if I have just about that in a fluctuation in my weight, then that's what I know to go for. So like I said, to me, it's much gentler, and I don't feel like I'm having to really, I'm adjusting my weight, but only because I know that I'm losing weight. So I'm not having to really adjust it much based on I can't take enough off or anything. I've never had any days like that where I haven't been able to take off everything that I had on.
Wow. Now, Don, how do
Mhm.
you calculate how much you take off during your treatment?
Oh, I don't have a problem with that at all. We don't watch my fluid. I don't watch my fluid. I drink liberally, and I don't go over. So I just don't have issues. If I am over, and the nurse will see that on my flow sheet. She'll ask me, how's my blood pressure? We don't really go by weight. We go by blood pressure. And your blood pressure really it tells. It's not a target weight thing. When you're at home, it goes by your blood pressure and how you feel is the real thing that they're looking at.
Got
It's
you.
a lot different in the center. Like Melissa said, it's more cookie cutter in the center. But when you're at home, you get that individualized care. And Marcus, my blood flow rate. Oh, okay. For a 2-hour home dialysis treatment, you probably have to run like a 450 or a 500 to get 2 hours. That is completely different from that machine in the dialysis center. The 500 on the next stage is nothing. Is like a 300 in the dialysis center.
What?
So
So you're saying a 500 blood flow rate on the next stage is like a 300 blood flow rate on like a Fresenius machine in center?
yes,
Wow. That must be,
it's so
wow.
buffered. The treatment is so buffered until like we're saying, you feel just about the same when you get off as you do when you get on. It's just so gentle, and they're not using. You would understand this, Steve. It's not a sodium bicarb dialysate. It's a dextrose, so it's a softer, buffered, dialysate. So, and for Karen's question, I do 6.5 hours, literally every other day at a 300 blood
Okay,
flow.
so wait a minute. So Melissa, she does it 5 days a week, Melissa?
5 days
And
a week.
Don, and you do it every other day. So what you're telling me is that each person has or could run on a different prescription or schedule. Not
It,
everybody's going to do 5 days or
no,
every other day. You can pretty
no.
much tailor it the way you want that's going to make you have the best quality outcome.
It depends on your lifestyle. You tell your nurse how many days you want to do treatment. If you want to do, they just don't want you to miss 2 days in a row. They don't like that. That's called a killer gap. That's the time statistically when most patients die after that 2 days off. So they like for you. This is on home hemo. This is not for PD. PD 7 days. But on home hemo, they like for you not to miss 2 days in a row. So you tell them, okay, I want to do 4 days a week. So they'll calculate your body weight, your numbers. They'll put it into the calculator and they'll tell you, okay, based on your weight, you need to do in order to have a 4-day treatment, you need to do 3 hours and 45 minutes on the machine. Now, somebody smaller than me may need to only do 3 hours and 15 minutes. Somebody else, if you want to do 5 days a week, then you may have a 3-hour treatment. If you want to do 6 days a week, then you have a 2-hour treatment. You
Wow.
know,
And then once you get used to it, you can kind of tailor it the way you want, right, Melissa?
Yep. Yep. I
Wow.
run 5 days a week for 2.5 hours. And my blood flow runs between 350 and 400, just depending on, what I want to press it up to. But yeah, it's definitely more tailored to the person than the cookie cutter style in center. And I think it's funny that Dawn I was laughing because Dawn said, the 2 days off in a row is the killer. Yet in center is totally fine with you having 2 days off because you're only doing 3 days a week. So it's kind of contradictory that they're telling us that 2 days in a row off is the killer, and yet most patients have they have Saturday,
all of them.
Sunday
Yeah,
off, or yeah. I mean,
yeah.
because you're only doing the 3 days a week. So, and I know that when I was doing in center, I did Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, I could feel it, and that was I don't
I
have those
couldn't
days.
wait to get to dialysis
I
after
know,
those days off.
exactly.
I was in pain. I was swollen. I couldn't wait to get to dialysis.
Exactly.
So you're telling me a lot of complaints that I will often hear patients say once they got home they had to it took a whole day to recuperate or they had to lay straight down. You're telling me you don't have none of this adverse experience post dialysis treatment now?
No, I get up in the morning. I get off the machine. I clean up my stuff, and I shake it off and I go to work.
I got off the machine today and
Wow.
went for a 14-mile bike ride.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you say that again? You got off the machine and you did a 14-mile bike ride?
Yep. In the Florida heat on top of that. But then that meant I just got to drink even more. So
Wow.
I
I
would have
mean,
never been able to do that on in center. I couldn't even ride a bike for like 5 miles in center, and that was on an off day, you know, like, so to do it in center, or I mean, to do it at home and just be able to get off the machine and go about my business and carry on a normal life. I mean, that speaks volumes for it. You know, I think that says all that needs to be said, is that the fact that you can actually live a normal life and it doesn't have to revolve around going and sitting in a chair 3 hours a week and getting your oil changed, essentially.
And I just have to add another thing. This is something we don't talk about, but y'all, I got my sexy back when I went home. I was not feeling sexy, sexual. I was not feeling any of that woman kind of stuff when I was in the center because I just felt too bad and I felt too tired. And I tell this every time I talk to patients. But once I got home and like my skin started lightening up and I got my appetite back and I started feeling little stuff and I was like, whoo, you know, I'm feeling like somebody, you know, right about now. You know, I might could do some damage. You know?
no,
And
wow.
I've heard a lot of men. I mean, it's unbelievable how many men that go home say that they got their mojo back. You know, and
Sure.
I know that's a sensitive topic, but I just had to bring that up because that's something that's not discussed.
No, but you're absolutely right, Don. When I was a nocturnal nurse down in Houston, Texas, uh, patients used to run from 7 to 3, like 8 hours. Some had 7.5, some had 6. My point is that when they ran like that, a lot of them got the doctor DC'd a lot of their medications, a lot of the high
Absolutely.
blood pressure medicine,
Yes. No.
and
Yep.
they were down not taking anything. I mean, it was amazing, and
It is amazing.
that was nocturnal in center. So can
Yes.
you imagine, uh, doing 8 hours, 3 days a week, which is 24 hours.
Right.
It's pretty much just like if you was at home. But
Yeah.
I just like the idea of being in the comfort of your own home. You can, if you want to snack on something, you ain't got to ask somebody to go to the snack machine. And now with COVID, ain't nobody coming in there refilling up those snack machines. So
No.
I don't know if they're going to let you bring in anything from the outside now to eat because of COVID unless you sneak it in. And, you got a sheet on, you got to kind of like sneak it under your mask.
Right. Right.
I mean, it would just seem like the better option if one could do it, because we know not everyone could do it, but the better option would be home dialysis, whether it's peritoneal or home hemo. We done went over 10 minutes of our broadcast, but I wanted to ask as we, before we close out from each one of y'all, and I'll start with you, Dawn. What would you tell that person who's watching the show right now who may be on the verge of starting dialysis or who may be on dialysis right now, or even one who may had a transplant and the transplant rejected and they have to start back some form of renal replacement therapy? What would be your message to these individuals right now, based on your experience for home dialysis? What would you tell these individuals?
The first thing I would say is to be strong. Don't be afraid because you know life is going to keep going, And we just have to tap into the things that we tapped into in the beginning when we first got diagnosed. And that's where we get our strength from to keep it pushing. Um, Nobody can take care of you better than you can take care of yourself. I say that to all of our warriors out there. We put a lot of trust and a lot of confidence in people's hands that we don't really know, or who, I mean, may like us, but they don't love us as much as we love ourselves, or as much as our family members love ourselves. And to everybody, I say, find out as much information as you can about this treatment. This is your life. This is the blood going in and out of your body. Um, Whether it's PD, home hemo, or transplant, these are all other options that you can choose to make your life easier. Dialysis, number one, is not supposed to hurt. And number two, it's not supposed to make your life miserable. If if any of those is one of your choices, then you do not have the right option for yourself. And you need to talk to somebody, a peer mentor, your care team, talk to somebody about another option, because you're not supposed to be in pain and you're not supposed to be miserable. You're supposed to be able to have a life and be able to manage with kidney disease and not let it manage you.
Wow. Before I start with you, Melissa, one question from Ray, host of my God, I keep my mind going absent-minded. Fulfill your. I just got tongue twisted, but host of God.
Never mind, Steve.
All right. But I'm sorry, Ray. I get it right one day. But look, Ray does doing it every day shorten your access lifespan. Melissa.
Actually, go ahead, Melissa. You could take that one.
I actually was told no, that it's probably better because you're not having those fluctuations in blood pressure and things like that. So it's not causing more constrictions. You're not having the issue. You're getting the heparin administered daily. So it's keeping that blood flow current versus getting it 3 times a week. So I was actually told that it's probably better. And you're actually, because you're doing it yourself, you're paying more attention to rotating your sites and stuff than the people in the clinic are, because, they're sticking several people a day. They're not going to remember your access out of everybody else's. And so they may be sticking that same spot over and over, and then you end up with an aneurysm. And those are the things that are going to affect your access. So when you're doing it yourself, you can be more mindful of things like that. And so, like I said, when I was training in center, I had more infiltrations just by listening to where they were telling me to go. Mm-hmm. And when I started doing it by myself at home, and I didn't have somebody over me in my ear trying to tell me where I should stick myself, I've had not one single issue like that, So I think it tells you right there that when you're doing it yourself and when you're really getting in touch with your own body, because this is a very invasive procedure, there's honestly nobody better than to stick yourself than you, because you know where it's at and you can feel when it's wrong and when it's not. Whereas, if a tech is putting a needle in you, they can't. They're not going to know immediately, whereas we do,
Right.
And then, Steve, on top of that, you can have a catheter, a fistula, or a graft for home hemo. So it doesn't make a difference what access you got. And if you have a fistula, you can they can use that buttonhole technique. And Steve, you know about the buttonhole technique, man. They have just about perfected that now, so that patients are able to cannulate themselves virtually without pain. And it really, the studies have shown that it's saving patients' accesses when the same person is doing the cannulation. When you're cannulating yourself, you're saving your access.
In fact, our guest Stephanie Jenkins, who was supposed to be on, she just started home dialysis, and she's going to be getting a buttonhole, so she would have been perfect to talk about this. Mm-hmm. But Don Martin, wants to know if he can send you a friend request.
Please, everybody friend me.
Uh-huh. Another question we had from Marcus, Don, and I want you to answer this, and you can weigh in too, Melissa. Marcus says, Steve, why isn't nocturnal dialysis an option? So
In-center?
Don, huh?
Does he mean in-center?
Yes.
Oh, I tell you that's an easy answer. Money. It costs too much to run the dialysis center and pay the staff overtime and night differential to do a nocturnal shift in the dialysis
But they
center.
do have them.
There's one in New York. There's one left. They shut them all down. And the last I heard that one in New York was full. So they may have it in your area. You have to look. If you can get a nocturnal shift in a dialysis facility, I would run for that if you really don't want to go home, because that's going to save your heart. But it's all about the Benjamins. They got to flip those chairs, y'all. Think about a restaurant. They can't have you sitting up in the restaurant all day, just eating, at your leisure. You got to get up out of that chair so they can get the next customer in. And that's really what it's all about. It's so much easier to give a patient nocturnal at home, and it's safer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Wow, just a lot of great information tonight on home dialysis. So, Melissa, where do we go from here as a community in home dialysis? Do you think enough is being broadcast on it with all these large organizations that's out here? Do you think enough is still being broadcast on home dialysis?
Not really, because I still know quite a few people on in-center that haven't been educated on it. And so I think that it really is just, it's going to fall in the hands of us advocates getting out there and making our presence known. And I know for me, I had to personally go into the unit and ask to speak to patients, and kind of under the ruse of just being a support, not to like pull them away from their chair. But that's basically how I had to get my in with my first clinic. Was I had to tell them I was there, just as a support person. And then I started talking to a lot of them about their home options. And for a lot of the people that I had spoke with, unfortunately, that was the first conversation they'd ever had with anybody, not even a medical professional, about their home options. And it was just sad to me that this is still happening in 2020, that we don't have people in the clinics that are willing to advocate for their patients when they know that they would benefit from doing home dialysis. So I think it ultimately, it's even though there's these incentives, I think it's still going to fall in the hands of the advocates, because on top of it, we have, a lot of these doctors and nurses and techs in the clinics are all still overworked, and they're not going to look at it as being their job to educate the patients, So it's going to end up being on our plate. And I think that that's part of why Dawn and I are doing this, is because we want to see people live longer, healthier, happier, better quality lives.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been there, if we've done in-center, we know the difference. So it's not like we're just coming at you from a more of a professional or or financially back perspective. We're coming to you from the sense of we have literally been there, and we know the difference between doing in-center and being at home. And that's why we advocate so fiercely for it.
Absolutely. And that's what I was going to say. It's not like y'all getting paid for this. So you're just trying to let people know the benefits of what you gained throughout this experience of kidney disease and being at home. And I mean, if I get hit, I do have stage 1, but if I had to go on dialysis, yes, I'm not stepping 1 foot in the center. you're gonna put the catheter in, and we're going straight home. I'm bypassing that clinic by
Yeah.
all means. So this has been a great show, and I mean, where can people reach out to each of you if they want to talk more? I know, Melissa, you do a daily meditation broadcast each day. Can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I do readings from Ayanla Van Zant's Until Today book on my Facebook every day, and I make those public, so people don't have to be my friend to be able to see them, but they have been very inspirational for me and a part of my growth practice. So I lean into things like that. But if anybody has questions about living with kidney disease and home dialysis and in-center dialysis, transplant, because I've been transplanted, I'm open for people can send me friend requests or just private messages or what have you. And I am happy to be of assistance in any way that I can.
Oh, absolutely. And Melissa, she don't know this yet, but she's going to be a contributing correspondent with Urban Health Outreach Media. But so, Don, where can people reach out to you? I know you operate a page, New York CKD Champs, and you're doing other things, COVID-19 Task Force up in New York. How can people reach out and contact you if they want to get something answered?
You can definitely reach out to me anytime. Dawn P. Mormon Edwards is my Facebook tag, Dawn P. Mormon Edwards, or you can go to New York State CKD Champions and join our group. And I also have a public page, which is CKD Champions Information and Resources. You can go there. I'm also on LinkedIn, and so it's Dawn P. Edwards on LinkedIn. And I'm an advocate. I am everywhere. So if you're in New York, once this pandemic is over, you'll probably see me in your dialysis center because I get out there and I'm in the dialysis centers talking to patients. So you're subject to see me in your dialysis center, and I travel, and wherever I go, I hit a dialysis center.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, Don, right quick before we get off, just share with us what's happening right now in New York with COVID-19 and dialysis patients.
Okay. I do, like Steve said, I do serve on the task force. I attend weekly meetings, and I get the data coming down from the ESRD networks, who get reports from the dialysis center on the COVID status in the dialysis centers. And New York State currently has 33,100 dialysis patients, New York State alone. Out of those 33,000 patients, just about 10% of them, which is almost 3,000 patients, have tested COVID positive. That doesn't mean that they have all died. A third of them have recovered. They have gotten over it. A lot of them did pass away. But just to show you the difference, there's 3,000 patients who tested positive in New York, but out of the home patients, there's only 6.
Wow. Wow. So you're saying out of the home patients, only 6 tested positive for COVID out of the many patients that go in center or maybe inside of a nursing facility or something like that.
That's as per. Now, all of data can fluctuate, but that's still staggering. It's stunning. I mean, there would have to be a whole lot of fluctuation. It's still staggering.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
And that's something either one of y'all didn't have to worry about. I mean, far as being at a high risk of being in center and going through the whole shifting around and the protocols that they implemented inside the center for COVID-19. I mean, you're at home, even when it comes to natural disasters. One quick, explain that right quick. Do you either one of you have to really prepare for a natural disaster? I know, Melissa, you're down in Cape Cod, Florida. Do you have a generator? How does that work out for you?
Yeah, I have a generator, and then I typically keep between 5 and 7 days of travel bags on hand. But to be honest, like I stayed during the last hurricane, and it was Irma, and I was on peritoneal at the time, but I didn't even lose power. So, I actually, even though I'm coastal, I live in a pretty well wired area. Like all of our stuff is underneath the ground, so it doesn't get affected as often by storms, whereas the upper, the pole type of transformers do. So yeah, I haven't had an issue with that, but I do have the supplies on hand, and I mean, I really wouldn't have to follow a diet because I'm still dialyzing every day.
Wow. What about you, Don?
Yeah, I live in an urban neighborhood, so our wiring is our transformers are above ground. They're on poles. However, I have a form that my dialysis center gives me to send to the electric company, to the water company, and so they know that I'm in here with life sustaining treatment, and they come and they cut the trees down around here, and they make sure that there's nothing that would impede me having a lack of power. They call me before a storm is coming, to tell me to, make sure that I have enough supplies and medication and everything. And I very, 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 I don't think that we've had a power outage since I've been home. And I've been home 10 years, besides the blackout that affects the whole city. And, if that's the case, then you do what everybody else does. You know, I didn't need to have dialysis because they had the power on the next day. I had
Wow.
treatment the day before. For peritoneal dialysis patients, you got nothing to worry about because you can do manual exchanges. So
Hmm.
that's another thing to think about if you're concerned about emergencies. You PD you can do in the dark.
Hmm.
Wow. Awesome. Man, has been an awesome show. I mean, if they talk about no educational home dialysis, nobody shedding light, but tonight I feel like we definitely shed light on this, and hopefully maybe interest people to Monday morning, tomorrow morning, or Tuesday when they go back in center to maybe go to their clinic to see if they do home dialysis. Now, what? One more question, and both of y'all can. I mean, whoever wants to answer this. If a person goes tomorrow and realize that their clinic doesn't offer home dialysis, and they say, "Damn, they don't even offer home dialysis. Now what? I'm SOL." What do they do then?
Do just what I did, and you can go on dialysis facility compare. You can talk to your social worker. If you don't have a good relationship with your social worker, you can do like I did and get on this computer and go to Home Dialysis Central. Home
Mm,
Dialysis Central. And you can put your zip code in, and they will tell you where the home programs are in within a certain mile radius. You can do the same thing on Medicare's website. It's Medicare's website, dialysis facility compare, and you put your zip code in, and they will give you the addresses and telephone numbers, and they'll even tell you how good the treatments are at those dialysis centers. And you can find a dialysis center that offers the treatment option that you want that's closest to you. You do not have to stay at any dialysis center. Don't ever let yourself get tricked into thinking you have to stay at a dialysis center just because that's where you were put. You can move and take your Medicare money anywhere that your Medicare will pay for it.
Wow. Anything you want to add to that, Melissa?
I would just say the same thing. I ended up doing this. I changed clinics because DaVita said they wouldn't do it. And I literally called clinics while I was in the hospital with peritonitis because I was not going back to DaVita. And I had I arranged my hemo. Even when I was doing in-center, I arranged it instead of the hospital because the hospital was wanting to discharge me right back to DaVita. And so I told them, no, I'm good. I got it all taken care of. I'm showing up there on Monday at 3:00, and so checking out your options. If you have to change clinics, because it's worth it.
Now, Fresenius patients have a advantage. They have kidney care advocates. Kidney care advocates can hook you up. They'll set you up with your program, whatever you need. They'll get you set up. Kidney care advocates. When you go to dialysis, ask for one of them. But everybody else, you got to do your work.
Wow. That's some good information. Kidney care advocate. So you go to Fresenius and you ask for a kidney care advocate.
Yes, they visit dialysis centers. They do education. They are literally people who are paid to go around and educate patients on their treatment options.
Paid from who?
Fresenius. That's their job. They're called kidney care advocates, and they go around and they educate patients on their treatment options.
Oh, wow. I never heard of that.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Check into that. All right. I mean, any last things I want to say before I end the show? I mean, this has been an awesome show.
We got to do this again. Everybody,
absolutely.
I'm gonna jump on after the show and answer every question that's up there if I can.
Okay, Melissa, anything you want to say before we end the broadcast?
I just want to reiterate that if anybody has questions about home dialysis options, or if you're feeling blocked by your clinic and you need some support, stuff like that, don't feel free to reach out to Dawn or I or any of the other warriors that are doing home dialysis, because we're all in this together. And I know that we all work very hard to advocate for other people as well as ourselves. And so we're happy to go to bat for you if we need to.
Oh, absolutely. You're not going to find this, anywhere. No show like this. Not people like myself, Dawn, and Melissa up an hour and a half talking about home dialysis, sharing their stories, and also trying to convince people without being paid from Next Stage or Fresenius or DaVita, but just trying to convince people that home dialysis may be that best option for you, especially if you're working or you got something else going on where you don't want to fit dialysis around its time. You want to fit it around your time. So I'd like to thank both of you ladies, Dawn P. Edwards and Melissa Tuff, dialysis advocates, home dialysis experts and warriors, for coming on World Kidney News and sharing your stories of hope, strength, and advocacy.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll definitely be talking with you, Dawn and Melissa, so we can get y'all back on for another show and talk about some of the myths of home dialysis and maybe some of the do's and don'ts if you decide to go down that road.
I would love to do that. That'd be great.
All right. Well, we're going to do it in about 2 weeks.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. All right. Thank you, ladies. Talk to you soon and have a great evening.
Now. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. All right. Oh, man, this has been an awesome show. And that's what we try to do each week of giving you quality shows that can impact your life in spite of dealing with kidney disease, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, or any chronic condition that leads to kidney disease. And hopefully these shows will help you make sound decisions if you find yourself in the position of having to start dialysis once again, or if you're brand new to that, that these shows will give you insight on decisions that you need to make to live a quality life. So thank you guys for watching World Kidney News. Share this broadcast so other warriors will be able to benefit from this broadcast. And not just warriors, but people who have parents and family members that may be starting dialysis or may need to make a decision on what's next. So, and I'd like to thank everyone who joined. Miss Judy, thank you so much for watching. Martin, Marcus, Miss Karen, Lisa Baxter, Pastor Gregory, Ronaldo, host of Finding Your Will to Survive, Brooklyn Weaves. We got so many, Shamika. There was one more person. Elizabeth Santiago, Jerry. Hope everything's going well with your moving. Tom, Melissa, Jana, Rocker. Thank you guys so much for watching World Kidney News with Steve Belcher. We'll see you this week for Warriors Quest and Urban Reno Talk with Tamika and Steve. And I'm not sure if Bella has a show tomorrow, Sisters Against Kidney Disease. But if not, again, stay tuned for Wednesday for Warriors Quest, 8:30 with Jared A. Brown. And then Thursday, Urban Reno Talk with Tamika and Steve, as we welcome Lizzie Presser, investigative journalist from ProPublica, as we talk about diabetes, what you need to know. Thank you guys for watching. We see you then. God bless you. I'm out. Peace.
This is the Polish Ambassador, featuring the Grouch and Scott Nice. Don't get it twisted.
I might be conscious, still I like to fuck.
I like it.
Do a little yoga, then lift some weights up. I be as I'm supposed to, perfectly imperfect. Indulge in deep combo, get hype when she